Welcome to Four Quarter Lives, a podcast exploring the profound impact of longer lives and careers on everything: countries, companies, couples, and careers. I'm Avivah Wittenberg-Cox, and on this week's Four Quarter Lives, I talk with Anu Madgavkar, partner at the McKinsey Global Institute, McKinsey's business and economics research arm. In 2025, Anu co-led two major McKinsey Global Institute reports that sit right at the heart of this podcast. One, Dependency and Depopulation, Confronting the Consequences of a New Demographic Reality, looks at the seismic implications of falling birth rates and aging societies in a world where 2/3 of people now live in countries below replacement fertility rates. The other, Agents, Robots, and Us, Skill Partnerships in the Age of AI, explores how AI agents and robots could theoretically automate more than half of U.S. work hours, and why demand for AI fluency in job postings has already jumped nearly sevenfold in just 2 years. We bring these two forces together. What happens when the demographic glacier of depopulation meets the electric current of AI? What does that mean for 60-year careers, for midlife workers, and for the social contract between generations? Anu and I talk about why older workers may be uniquely well-placed to orchestrate people, agents, robots teams, the 8 transferable skills that underpin sustainable careers, and how AI might finally help move unpaid care into the paid economy. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Anu Madgavkar. Welcome, Anu Madgavkar, to Four Quarter Lives. Delighted to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Anu, you have just published in the course of 2025 two really major reports on two of what I consider to be the century-shifting topics of our time. One on depopulation and demographics, and the other on the new world of AI, Agents, Robots, and Us. Wonderful titles. And I want to spend this time with you actually exploring the overlaps between these two reports. But give me a brief overview of each of them and why you did them.
Sure. I really appreciate the fact that you start by linking these two, what we think are seminal pieces of work and very important for the world. And I like linking them because you can't think about technology in a silo of its own apart from human beings. And similarly, you can't think of human beings and human interactions without thinking about technology. So at the highest level, these are really different manifestations of the same, sets of experiences and opportunities that human beings have. But in particular, both these shifts are, I hate to use the word unprecedented. We have overused that word, but they are genuinely.
But it's true. But in this case, it's seriously true. This is very new.
It's seriously true because demographic forces are not new, but they are truly tectonic. So think about demographics like a massive glacier that's kind of moving through the world. It's moving very slowly, but it is impossible to change its course and direction. And it has so much power and might that it has the ability to reshape economies and societies and literally landforms, if you will, as it goes along. So it's really up to us to recognize that and think about what it will take to adapt in many ways to demographic change. And that's why it's one big unprecedented tectonic shift. And then on the other hand, AI is also unprecedented in the sense that technological change is not new, but the ability of technology to bring the quality of more inference and more kind of adaptability and agency to machines, which were up until now more or less pre-programmed to perform based on rules. But what we're seeing in the world of AI and generative AI in particular is that, that's being challenged. So you put these two forces together, you might have an argument about, well, demographics is really constraining the world's supply of labor and skills in a profound way, but AI is really augmenting that capacity in another very profound way. But to go back to your question, what was the bottom line or the key findings, right, from both these pieces of research? If I go back to thinking about the demographics work, I think what we see is that in the coming, let's say, 2 decades or 25 or so years, so very much in the foreseeable future, the extent of changes in the structure of populations, particularly in the more so-called aging economies or advanced economies, the extent of that is reaching a degree that our assumptions about economic growth, what work means, how we create value, how we have established a structure of social support and dependency, a generational structure of doing that called the social contract. All of these assumptions are really not going to hold because the math does not add up if you factor in the impact of these changes in age structure. So
and maybe just for a lay audience here, what are we talking about? I mean, you described it very powerfully in this report, which I will put a link to in the show notes, about shifting dependency and depopulation. And basically what you're saying is there's incredibly fast falling birth rates combined with an aging society. And so the shape of countries is already shifting very dramatically. And in our lifetimes, we're going to see demographic shifts we have never experienced before in human history.
Yeah, and just to put a pin on those demographic shifts, today, 2/3 of the world live in countries where the total fertility rate, which is the number of children an average woman would bear in her lifetime, has dropped below the replacement rate. The replacement rate is about 2.1. In 2/3 of the world today, we are below 2.1. In some countries, we are below 1. And it has been exceedingly difficult, if not impossible, for a country to bring its average fertility rate back above replacement once it's fallen below replacement. That means for most of these countries, not just the advanced economies, not just China, but even developing countries like India, the country is on track for eventual depopulation. If your fertility is below replacement, that means the population is not going to grow fast enough. Now, that means not just that overall populations don't grow, but the age composition changes in a very dramatic way. So when you think about the share of people below 65 or working age people between 15 and 65 relative to those over 65, that support ratio, so how many working people are there to support older people who reduce their involvement in work, that support ratio is set to halve for a lot of advanced economies and China in particular. It goes from about 4 working people for every older person down to 2 by 2050. And that just means that to sustain life and consumption and living standards for a population that's also growing older, so you have more people in retirement living longer and consuming just as much as they used to, just on different things, you're going to need younger people to be in work, perhaps people to be in work much longer, and most importantly, for productivity, which is the value of what we produce, so that there is enough to go around and be distributed in the right way. Our productivity has to grow. If these things don't grow, we're looking at 0.5 percentage point of GDP growth each year vanishing simply because of demographic forces. And that's a lot when a lot of these economies are growing at 1.5, 1%,
half a percentage point of
right?
GDP per year. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's pretty graphic stat.
And so we really underscore it's certainly possible that people work longer. The boundaries between, working and retiring are blurring. At the same time, we hear a lot of the desire for a shorter work week and more leisure. We don't believe that immigration is necessarily the solution, just given this is a planetary issue and there are limits to immigration as well. And so it feels like all roads converge back on this idea of working more productively and raising sort of the value of what you do as opposed to assuming that we have all the bodies in the world to throw at all our problems and we can grow out of things just by labor supply.
So, are we suggesting then that your second report on AI is appearing at this magical moment that may actually offer a way out of this conundrum?
So we do believe in the power of AI in combination with, of course, other technologies. So AI is both a foundational as well as an amplifying technology, but it interacts with a whole bunch of other technologies to potentially deliver exactly what we need, which is...
Is that why you paired them this year? I'm just curious. Was that actually your design thinking in doing the one in January and the one at the end of the year?
Well, I think AI and technology is a bit of an enduring theme for us. So we have built on the future of work type of research to say how is work changing with technology for many years now. I do think that both of these issues have bubbled up to these enormous proportions this year, right? Or the year ahead. We typically think about our research agenda a year ahead. And we did think that both these issues were independently bubbling up, but also so related that it just made sense to have two big pieces of work that are complementary and sort of inform and support each other, right?
Yeah.
And on the technology and AI side, when we saw advancements in generative AI, we did a piece of work that actually went quite deep and said, how might the way we work actually change now that we have these capabilities? We approach this question in a very granular way that looks at all sorts of work that human beings are involved in the paid economy, in the labor force, right? If you look at the structure of occupations and activities that we are engaged in, these typically require human capabilities. And some of these capabilities might be physical in nature, like the ability to move something or lift something or manipulate something with our hands. A lot of these, increasingly in our modern economy, are cognitive in nature. So the ability to analyze data or gather information or see a pattern or come up with an argument, right, or an analysis. And then many of these are actually social and emotional in nature. So the ability to connect with somebody, to understand what you think just by looking at you, right, and seeing your expression, or to convey my own position and point of view, not just based on thoughts, but in a way that resonates with another human being. So there are all of these social and emotional capabilities as well. So we are able to look at this in quite some detail and ask whether technology has the potential, right? Just the demonstrated technical potential to perform these activities at the same level that a human being would do. And in some cases, the answer is yes. In some cases, the answer is no, right? And we're able to then quantify something that we call technical automation potential. In today's work structure, take the United States as an example. In our research, we focus on the US. We find that over half of all work hours today could be performed by combinations of technology based on what the demonstrated capabilities of these technologies are. 57% of all work hours today. It varies by occupation and role, but
that's a lot.
Very large number, right?
So, over more than half of everything we do could be automated.
More than half of everything we do could theoretically be done by an intelligent machine, an AI-powered machine. We call it agents and robots because we have agents that could be more active in the digital world on cognitive work. Robots might be active in the physical world, actually moving things around. But it's the combination of AI powering these machines that could do a lot of work going forward. And there is a lot of public debate and societal concern around AI is going to take our jobs away.
Yep.
But in this research, we're linking it back in a way to demographics to say, hey, first of all, we are in a long-term, human capacity constrained environment because of demographics.
Yep.
And in the immediate term, what AI will do is change what human workers do. It's not really about substituting and replacing. It is part of that, but it is also just changing what's expected of us and how we work in partnership with these new co-workers that are intelligent machines. So there is a lot about how we work and how we actually need to step up our skills. It's not about devaluing our skills or our skills disappearing. It is about a new frontier in the way we learn and express ourselves and put our skills to work, we're going to have to upgrade all of that to take advantage of what AI can do.
So I want to dig into a bit the skills part of the overlap between our longer lives, longer working lives. I mean, that's what's currently being predicted. And then this complete reshaping of what work will look like with these agents and robots to assist us. So your report is saying that AI fluency demand has risen 7-fold just in the last 2 years, faster than any other skill. So what does AI fluency look like for your average mid-career professional compared to the 25-year-old just coming on board?
Yeah, sure. We think AI fluency is a skill that's going to be universally relevant. So sometimes there is a perception that, this is all about younger people who are so smart with technology, learning new things. Like my son will interact with ChatGPT for his homework and so on, right? But it's not really the domain of just young people, because AI fluency is something that is going to be required, we think, to perform your job regardless of what your job is.
It's going to be everywhere, everything,
it's going to be everywhere,
every job.
And we're going to need to know how to work with AI.
Yep.
So take the examples, right? If you think about a younger person who might be in a job that is much more doing or making or creating something, it's a more hands-on job. Typically, it's a more, let's say, self-contained job. So you work in teams and you work with other people, but you're really responsible to produce something yourself. Take a software developer, right? Or take somebody who might be a writer or somebody pulling together, a piece of research or a written work. So these are people who are sitting heads down and actually doing something themselves.
Yep.
And with AI fluency, a lot of that, the work around the first draft, let's say in software development, right? The first draft of coding could be done with the help of AI or by AI. A lot of the work that is pretty straightforward in terms of debugging that first round of code could be done by AI. The role of that young professional would then be more around thinking about, well, what are the goals or the program or project goals that I really want to achieve? How can I set up the task for AI in a way that actually makes it more effective? And even beyond software coding, if I were kind of a writer of digital content, right? There are a lot of young people are sort of creating content. You could have like a coworker who creates 5 versions of the content for you. Yep. You don't like 3 of them. You think 1 or 2 of them are promising. You give the prompts to kind of improve that. You let your imagination run wild in terms of, well, how do I think people will react to what they're seeing? So you're stretching your mind in new ways because you have this, let's say,
powerful sparring partner,
powerful co-worker to be your helpmate, right? Yep. So that's how an individual's work might change. And if you think about a mid-career or a mid-career professional, right? Now, typically, such a person might be in more of a managerial job, right? For instance, like today, they might be managing a team or supervising a team. And in the future, much of those teams could actually be AI co-workers, right? So it's about everything I said in the context of an individual worker. How do you think about setting up the goals right? How do you think about guiding the prompts? How do you think about taking the work of AI and applying your own judgment and nuance around, well, does this really make sense? Typical mid-career people might have 10 or 15 years of knowing, and that's probably more than the patterns that AI is able to discern and kind of make sense of in the near term. So it's about looking at the validation, at bringing that sort of intuition and inference, and then making judgments about the work that your team members are doing and setting them up in ways that make kind of AI as successful. So thinking really about AI as part of your team. And that might be the way work changes for, let's say, a manager. In fact, a lot of AI implementation cases that we're seeing live in the context of businesses have come back to this question of how does the manager's role really change when the manager is thinking about not just human team members, but also AI team members.
Well, maybe that's what we could focus in on. You've identified in this report 8 what you call high prevalence transferable skills. Maybe you want to just run through these. And is this then the new backbone of a sustainable, 60-year career? Are we all going to start adapting our educational systems to these transferable skills?
I think this is a really important thing to understand. And I'd love to start by describing a little bit of how we even shine the light on skills. In our research, when we look at skills, we're really looking at the ways or the words. It's almost a skill is a word, right? First and foremost, it's used to describe something. And these are the words that employers use when they put out job postings to say, we want to fill a role.
We're looking for this.
We're looking for this word, right? And what is striking, there are literally tens of thousands of skills as captured in these job postings. We kind of winnowed that list down to about 7,000 skills that appear with at least an acceptable degree of frequency across job postings, because there is no standardization. There has been more and more of both kind of specialization. So employers chasing very specialized. I want somebody who understands this coding language, or I want somebody who has this particular knowledge of a particular way of doing business. So there is more specialization, but there is also just more specificity, right? Like employers are just using their own words to describe things, and it's really hard to make sense of. So with our list
their own acronyms, so it becomes even more impenetrable. Yep.
Absolutely. Which actually make it hard for job seekers as well as, I guess, training and education providers to know what exactly is needed, right? Yep. But we did see that in this pattern of rising specialization, there are about 8 skills that occur in 70 to 90% of all job roles and the expectations that employers have. And these are things like communication. So we are human beings. We want people who communicate well. Problem solving. We want to look at different kinds of problems regardless of context. And we want people who can come up with what they think is the right answer, right?
Fix it.
That's just a basic skill to fix a problem. Yeah. Surprisingly, something like detail orientation, which you might think in the world of technology and digitization, like who cares? But no, we do care, because human beings are able to think about, things that look off, or things that you want somebody who can focus on specifics and not just be at a high level. Writing skills continue to be important.
That's encouraging.
How to think about sort of operations. So, getting something done and what is the kind of workflow or process to get that done. Customer orientation. So having empathy or the ability to view somebody as a customer and be responsive to them. These are really important human attributes. And they will, as you say, we think, form the connective tissue between different kinds of jobs and occupations in the marketplace, because the metabolic rate of change is rising. What we consider an occupation or a role, 5 years ago or 3 years ago may no longer be relevant next year. And it's actually a healthy sign of a labor market that allows people to reinvent themselves and change what they do and move to new roles. But to do that, you need something you can leverage, a core quality, right?
Yep.
And we think that doubling down on these transferable skills, but in all these skills will not remain what they are today. All of them will need that layer of AI fluency to say, how do I problem solve better by using AI? How do I communicate better by using AI? The secret sauce or the magic potion is really, I think, for our systems to double down on helping us develop and strengthen the core skills, but with the layer of how can this be made a superpower, because I'm using AI to do many things which I may not have been able to do, and I can use my really human faculties then to become even better at doing that thing.
So what's a little bit your idea of how fast this is going to spread? I've been reading all kinds of people complaining about how adoption is much slower than predicted, how the majority of usage seems to be more in people's personal lives than in their professional lives. And then also, there's so many stereotypes about older workers not being very tech friendly. What are you seeing? Is that true? Or on the contrary, do you think they might have an advantage in terms of the core of those transferable skills you just described
Yeah,
to adopt it faster?
these are both great questions and related questions again, right? So let's talk about the pace of adoption question first, right? So the 57% of all US work hours could theoretically be automated, right? The number that we have put out is a technical automation potential number. This is what is possible given current technologies. But those technologies need to be converted into solutions that businesses can actually use.
Yeah.
The cost benefit has to make sense, right? Cost of technology versus the wages we pay labor. And most importantly, it's a human and cultural process to change. It's a change process, right?
Yeah.
And change takes time. We find that the adoption of a technology could take anything to reach kind of either peak or plateauing levels of adoption. Has taken in the past anything from about 7 years to 27 years. So it could be, and with AI, it could be a little faster, but it could also be a lot of time before it actually reaches everybody, right?
Okay.
So in our research, we have a way to model that out. And we think that in the next 5 years, by 2030,
Yeah.
roughly 30% or so of work hours could potentially be automated using AI and all of these technologies. 30% of current work hours. That does not mean 30% unemployment. What it means is people will have to find new and will find new opportunities to spend the 30% of time that now a machine can do, can be repurposed or redeployed in doing something which we hope is more productive, might be a new product or service, might be something which is less dull, less dangerous, less dirty. So removing some kinds of work and allowing us to refocus on other kinds of work, and meeting new kinds of demand as well. So in line with that roughly 30% by 2030, there's an economic value to all the work hours that we could repurpose and redeploy. And in the US economy, that's about $3 trillion of economic value that a combination of people and businesses and consumers could harness into kind of meeting needs and doing things differently, right? And the reason I say that that's related to your question about older people is because the automation, it's not the flick of a switch, right? This is about the hard work of looking at how we do any business process. Business process, it feels like a very management consultant jargon, but it's not really. It's really just how we
do things. Yeah, no,
how
just
we
the
do
basic
things.
map
The
of
sequence of steps that we do, the handoffs between people. I, do something and I ask my coworker or my boss or my subordinate to take that forward and do something else, right? And at the end of it, we achieve what we're collectively trying to do. So that's what a business process is. And the process has to change with a combination of technology coming in and people learning how to do new things. So that multi-step sequence of how we do work needs to change, right? And the best people, the essential people to make those business transformations happen are people who are embedded in work themselves, who understand the context, understand what the process is. What are the customer goals or the business goals we're really trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Right. So take the example of, let's say, a sales rep or a sales manager, right? Today, if I'm trying to kind of drive up sales with my customer base, there are a set of steps that I follow, right? I might every week or every month look at all my data and say, oh, who are the customers that I should be calling, right? To suggest that they buy something. And then what could I be offering? So I follow a bunch of steps, but someone who understands that well would be a partner in rethinking that process to say, well, we could have AI agents doing these kinds of things, which is looking at the whole map or the whole portfolio of customers and trying to figure out who should be called, what we should talk to them about, and actually doing the first round of those things, and then bringing to this experienced older sales manager the ripest of candidates or situations, or the highest value potentially, to say, like, there were some easy sales that even the agent could convert, but these are actually more complex. The person will want to talk to you, but these are the 10 things, right, that you can talk to them about and you should be mindful of. So we need the experience of those mid-career people who know how the business works to think about how this can be reimagined in ways that leverage what they do best and take away or kind of enable through AI the things that they need not be spending their time doing. And it's that business process re-engineering.
Yeah.
Again, big fancy word, but what it means is leverage what people already experience about the things that make them more productive, right? And let's try and figure out how we bring in technology to kind of reimagine how
so
we
there are
work.
kind of two advantages eventually to that older employee versus the younger. And what I'm hearing is, one, you're really saying that the future of AI isn't just about changing little bits of work. It's about changing the whole system and the way it's been designed. And the only people who know how things actually work have been around for a little while and get the systems. And then that there are going to be some very particular problems that are unusual, haven't been mapped out, where the human skills are still going to be needed to step in a kind of mature way and figure out and innovate something for that particular situation.
Absolutely. If you look at today's work, there is already almost half, right, of all our work, which is so human in nature that we don't think technologies can do it today. So I just want to call, there's a lot of attention paid to the 57%, but there's the other. But that's just part of the story, right? Because even as you automate work, there will be more things that humans are considered vital for, right? Which is this job of validating the smell checks, the sniff checks, the kind of making sure things are authentic, right? Making sure that there's trust in the system, that you have human eyes on what's happening. So we're going to expand the scope of human tasks beyond what's done today because you're using a machine to do part of it, right? And that automatically makes human beings kind of more important to oversee and help those machines. And then ultimately, there are new needs altogether that we can meet. So, to give you one example, and coming back to the whole problem of aging that we have, right? We will see a real, pretty much an explosion of need for care related work in the future, right? And a lot of that care related work is in the paid economy. We can make that kind of more productive and more effective. But a lot of care work is in the unpaid economy today. So you think about like people suffering from dementia or neurological decline, family members spend a lot of time supporting and assisting those people. And it's not even in
and then step out and have to step out of work.
Have to step out of work, right? And with AI, and we are seeing advancements already in using AI both virtually as well as through wearable devices, as well as actually through empathetic robots that help support people who can't stand and move on their own. So you could have a lot of machines assisted by human beings, but taking out that unpaid care work into meeting new needs, right? And when that happens, the need for human beings to actually design, produce, deliver, troubleshoot, all those services will rise. And that's just one example of a completely new product or service that might emerge in the future.
So you think we're going to see the evolution of all this unpaid caring work move into the paid economy? Because as it transfers to AI-supported mechanisms?
Absolutely. And we don't have to look far. We can look into history to see how this happened. I mean, I love the fact that we have the dishwasher and the washing machine, right?
Yeah.
And that has taken out unpaid care work. It has created many more jobs in design, manufacturing, marketing, supply chain for those machines, essentially, right? And now there is more and more AI in those machines that actually help me maybe prompt it with my voice rather than having to look at a screen and figure out which option I need. So this has already happened, right? And more of this will happen. In the unpaid work domain of what we do as human beings, but also in the leisure domain, because a lot of leisure related needs could get expressed in ways that are part of, paid services that we can buy or a machine that can help you. So take the experience of shopping, right? So the retail sector is poised for a lot of disruption.
Yeah.
And all of us
It's already been pretty disrupted.
It's already been disrupted. I mean, e-commerce did its own thing, and now you're in a situation where AI bots are starting to do their thing, right? And everybody craves that companion, the friend, or in my case, my daughter, right, to go shopping with me and be my coach, or my someone who says, oh, I think this might be a good buy for you, or oh, there's actually something available. It's the same thing, but it's cheaper. Why don't you go here and buy it, right? So we all want that coach and or not coach, really, companion. And a personalized shopping assistant AI application is we're already seeing them, right? And they are going to proliferate, both in the service of the customer, but also designed by retailers or fintech players who want to offer it as a value-added service to lure, more customers.
I've been waiting for my little avatar to go off and be properly clothed for decades now. So if it's finally time and finally coming. People have used the metaphor of electricity, like we're in a phase that AI will be like electricity. It'll just completely be a fundamental part of everything, everywhere, and every human activity. Does that resonate with you? Would you use that? It also took a long time to electrify and redesign the world for electricity.
Absolutely. And I was going to go exactly there, right? Which is to say that it could absolutely be one of those foundational technologies that amplifies everything else and also enables newer and newer forms of technology innovation, just like electricity did. So it enabled, it amplified, it's a foundation. It does take rewiring, right, of the world. That's what it took. And that's what AI will take as well. Yeah. What's really interesting, by the way, is the other connection I don't think a lot of people make, which is people think about AI as something that's, super digital and it's all in the cyberspace, etc. But it has profound implications for the physical world. It has huge energy requirement implications. It needs, new forms of a user interface. It will need, right, new forms of user interface, like the way you think about an intelligent car or an intelligent, house cleaning bot will be different. So we're going to need to innovate like physical things. Our whole energy, system, for example, our resources or minerals or, those kinds of production systems, all of the physical systems of the world will also have to adapt in line with what AI is able to do. That's why I think electricity is actually a really good analogy, because it's the same story there.
Yeah. So on the whole, this report and you both sound pretty optimistic that there's a brave new world appearing. There's so much fear, and even, very specialized people in AI are yelling about dystopia. Where do you stand? Are you a techno optimist or maybe not a techno, maybe an AI optimist distinctively? And what do you fear?
I do think it's more complicated than just saying, I'm an optimist. And so we see boundless possibilities. We see clear productivity upsides, which we're able to quantify. We are encouraged by what we see as the innovation around AI that actually brings human beings front and center in that process. So I'm optimistic about all those things. But I think we also need to be clear-eyed about the risks and challenges, right? Like every powerful technology is potentially a dual use technology, right? It can have consequences, intended or otherwise, that make the outcomes not so great, right? And we have to consider what those might be in the case of AI as well. I would think that the areas to really look out for, they're well understood by AI researchers, and I'm not a technologist myself, but the question around sort of trust, the governance of AI, the ability of AI not to reinforce biases, but to be trained in culturally diverse or, in all forms diverse types of training material so that we don't just reinforce the mistakes or the biases of the past.
Yeah.
the need for understanding what's happening so that it's not a black box. We can't disclaim responsibility. A business can't really disclaim all responsibility and say AI did it, right? We are human beings and we are corporate entities and we are going to be responsible, right? So the need to have more understanding of what that is. And then ultimately, I think it's going to be really important to remember that in a way, AI is in the service of humankind. It is there to solve real human problems. It is there to reduce friction in real human interactions. But the goal is to solve the human problem, and the goal is to establish easier and more, less painful barriers in human interactions, right?
Yeah.
And this is front and center of everything that AI should be doing, which I think is going to be part of the discourse and part of what we see evolve. I don't think we even know what the answers are.
We don't know where we're headed.
We don't know where we're headed, but we can't afford to lose sight of the fact that human beings have to be at the center of everything that AI does.
So, given your year on these two mega topics, what advice would you give your average 50-plus person who may be listening to us if they want to have a long, thriving, engaged career and life? I mean, should they just go and certify an AI, adopt it, use it, learn it, or focus more on your idea of these fundamental transferable skills?
I think it is both. I wouldn't say go and certify yourself in AI because that feels again like a moving target, like it's not clear what programming language you want to learn and whether that's even necessary, right? The skill of learning to build AI or govern AI even might remain a narrower skill that science and technology professions need, but not everybody. I certainly don't need that.
Yep.
But what I do need is the willingness to try and experiment with using AI. And I don't need a certification to do that.
Yeah.
I just need to do it, to do more of it, and to learn by doing it. And that is what I would tell every mid-career person, including myself. And we talk about this all the time. I probably don't use it as much as I should,
Yep.
So don't delegate it, right, to your team. Don't tell your team, go figure this out with AI and come back to me. Like, let's roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty and try it ourselves.
Yep.
It's the experience of doing it, which is vital, which is going to help us hone all those transferable skills. And for which I don't think we need to go and get certified or get a training or anything like that. That's what it's going to be.
Yep. Cool. So to your AI bots, everybody, make them your best friend. And my last question, maybe, Anu, is it seems to me that in every organization I go anywhere in the world, AI is like the hot topic and demographics is not. So I'm just curious about the reception of your expectation and what was the reception of the first report. How much do you think? I mean, do you consider these two topics on a par on the strategic radar? And do you think they're there or are they coming? Or is one really much, much more prevalent than the other in your experience?
I think the AI topic is clearly the number one hot button from a business implication standpoint, because it's moving so fast and there is a sense of if I don't do what I need to do, I will lose competitive ground quickly, right? So there's an urgency about it, which is what bubbles it up to the top. I think I've been pleasantly surprised on demographics because, of course, there are strategic implications of having a much older workforce, of having, maybe a third or 40% of your sales coming from older people. This is what a lot of companies and businesses are staring at.
Yeah.
But you don't have that immediate urgency that unless I fix something now, I'm going to lose ground in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, what you do have is, because it is such an intensely human question and societal issue, I have found that every CEO is thinking about this, thinking about the next generation, thinking about what does this mean for younger people, for children, right? Or their own sort of kids who might be in their mid-20s and starting out life and wondering, between getting a foothold in my first job versus, dating versus, having a kid, right? And having to deal with all of that. Like, what are the choices I'm making? Like, these are really important and difficult choices for young people.
Yep.
And the odds are kind of going against them in terms of this whole intergenerational social contract, right?
Yep.
And it's such a big issue that is such a human issue that I think it's attracting a lot of concern, interest, and attention from the business community as well for those reasons.
Fantastic. And it's one that hits everyone, everywhere, in every country, and personally in every family. So I think at different speeds, these two topics, and I just want to thank you for putting them both on the agenda in such extraordinarily compelling reports. They're very easy to read. They're very hard-hitting. They're full of essential graphs and data for every business case you want to present in any organization. So listeners, they will be in the show notes. Please do read them and use them, because these two forces are going to reshape our world. Anu, thank you so much for everything you've done. Thank you for taking the time with us. And, well, I don't know what you're going to do in 2026, but I'm all ears.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I hope your listeners find it helpful.
I'm sure they will. Thank you. See you soon. Bye. Have a good rest at the end of the year. Well deserved.
Thank you.
That was Anu Madgavkar, partner at the McKinsey Global Institute, helping us see demographics and AI not as separate storylines, but as two sides of the same future. On one side, a demographic reality in which shrinking working age populations and longer lives challenge our inherited assumptions about growth, work, and retirement. On the other, a new generation of AI agents and robots that could automate a large share of today's work hours if we learn how to redesign jobs, workflows, and skills around them. What I'm taking from this conversation is that midlife and older workers aren't the casualties of this shift. They're actually central to making it work. The experience needed to rethink whole business systems, the human skills that remain in demand across almost every role, and a new baseline of AI fluency together become the backbone of these new 60-year careers of ours. You'll find links to both McKinsey Global Institute reports on dependency and depopulation and on agents, robots, and us in the show notes. They're rich with data, scenarios, and arguments you can use in your boardroom, your policy work, or your own career rethink. Thank you for listening to 4 Quarter Lives. I'm Avivah Wittenberg-Cox. If you enjoyed this episode, do share it with someone thinking about their own next quarter. And join me next time as we continue to explore how longer lives are reshaping everything: work and business, love and leadership. See you soon. For more thinking about the impact of our 4 Quarter Lives, you can read my column at Forbes and subscribe to my Elderberries newsletter on Substack. Let's design lives that aren't just longer, but better.